Barry Gibb is one of popular music's towering figures, a golden thread woven through decades of songs, memories, and lives. He's the voice who turned falsetto into a flame, the songwriter whose pen etched timeless ballads, the mind behind Staying Alive and How Deep Is Your Love, works that feel as if they'll sing on for centuries. From a childhood of scarcity and a near-fatal accident to world stages and historic record sales, he rose from nothing to stand among the greatest writers and performers in modern music. He is Sir Barry Gibb, knighted by the British Crown, honored across continents, and cherished as the soul of the Bee Gees, the group that helped define an era. His name is carved into the permanent stone of music history, yet every triumph came at a terrible price. He endured the grief of laying 3 brothers to rest, the weight of carrying a harmony once made for 4, a first marriage that ended quietly, and the slow squeeze of illness. And now, nearing 80, the last brother left is a man walking through long corridors of memory, part solitude, part gratitude, part sorrow. If his songs have ever lifted you, consider this a small salute to an extraordinary life's work and the unbreakable spirit behind it. His story begins not with applause, but with scars. Barry was born on September 1st, 1946, at the Jane Krukel maternity home on the Isle of Man. The family had little, but they had hope. His father, Hugh, an accomplished drummer, earned what he could playing the hotel circuits and coming home at dawn with more fatigue than money. His mother, Barbara, held the household together with stubborn kindness and quiet tears when the cupboard ran thin. Barry followed his sister Leslie, and in December 1949, twins Robin and Morris arrived. The rooms were cramped, the funds meager, but the love was steady and loud. Then tragedy. Before he turned 2, Barry reached for a teapot. Boiling water spilled across his small body. Barbara burned her own hands, trying to strip away his soaked clothes as Hugh raced through the streets to Noble's hospital. Doctors warned he might have 20 minutes. Infection came. Gangrene threatened. For 2 and 1 to 2 months, Barbara kept vigil at his bedside. Hugh worked nights and sat by day. The family stretched to the breaking point. Against every prediction, the child survived. He came home fragile, wrapped in tenderness, his skin mapped with burns across his chest and arms, scars that never faded. Barry would say later, he remembered not the pain, but the marks and the feeling of being protected. The accident did more than scar his body. It taught him what love fighting for life looks like. Another shadow fell when he was 4. A stranger tried to lure him away. Nothing physical happened, but the fear stayed. He had to explain to police what no child should have to name. If the burns marked his skin, this episode marked his spirit. Still, the Gibb household stayed close and determined. Barbara hid her tears. Hugh kept the rhythm going. The family moved often from Chapel House to St. Catherine's Drive in 1949, to Snell Road in 1952, and in 1955 to Manchester, packing and unpacking like a ritual. Instability was constant, but so was the music. Hugh's drumming rattled the walls, and Barry, not yet 6, hummed little tunes that felt like prayers. With Robin and Morris beside him, those small harmonies began to sound like a promise. By 1957, at 11, Barry pulled his younger brothers and a couple of friends into their first group, the Rattlesnakes. They weren't chasing fame. They were chasing air. They sang Everly Brothers and Buddy Holly songs in small halls where the ceiling sweated and the dreams were bigger than the town. Then the guitar snapped in 2. They couldn't afford another. The band fell apart. Barry refused to let the music go. He reformed with Robin and Maurice as Wee Johnny Hayes and the Blue Cats, entering talent shows where the prize was bread and bus fare. In August 1958 came the family's leap of faith. The Gibbs boarded the Shipfare Sea under an assisted migration plan, leaving most possessions behind for a new life in Australia. The journey was crowded. Seasickness and longing made poor sleeping partners. They arrived to the same struggle on hotter ground. In 1959, the boys were singing at Redcliffe Speedway, doing sets between races while dust and petrol stung their eyes. We sang between the races, Barry recalled. The engines were louder than we were until they weren't. The harmonies cut through. People turned, people listened. It wasn't glamour, it was survival. At 15 in 1961, Barry left school. "If I stayed, we'd starve," he said later with matter-of-fact honesty. He began writing in notebooks deep into the night, melodies scribbled like lifelines. The brothers signed with Festival Records in 1963, initially shuffled to a minor imprint and largely ignored. Barry kept writing. By 1966, his I Was a Lover, a leader of men, won a major songwriting award. Recognition finally knocked. A sign the kid with scars had a voice. The radio could no longer pretend not to hear. In 1967, armed with demos and nerve, they sailed back to London and met manager Robert Stigwood, who saw destiny where others saw just promise. New York mining disaster 1941 landed with uncanny magnetism. Many thought it must be the Beatles in disguise. Then came Massachusetts to love somebody in words, melodies that felt like letters mailed straight to the heart. Barry's writing, full of yearning and shape, stood out immediately. But momentum can crush as much as it carries. Relentless touring, nonstop recording. By the late 1960s, both Barry and Robin were collapsing from exhaustion on flights between continents. Tensions rose. When Barry's 1st of May was picked over Robin's beloved Lamplight for a single hit to a seam. In 1969, Robin left. Barry tried continuing with Maurice. He even cut a solo single, I'll Kiss Your Memory, and assembled an album bluntly titled The Kid's No Good. The single flickered in the Netherlands, but failed in the UK and US. The album was shelved. For the first time, Barry learned the hard truth. Even great talent can be muted if you strip away the alchemy of brotherhood. Late in 1970, the pull of blood proved stronger than pride. The brothers reconciled. Out of the mended bond came Lonely Days and How Can You Mend a Broken Heart, their first US #1. To the public, it was victory. To the brothers, it was confession. Their music from then on carried the weight of fracture and forgiveness. By 1974, the Gibbs shifted their center to Miami, and under producer Arif Martin, Barry found the sound that would transform everything, the falsetto. What began as a desperate studio yelp solidified into identity. It wasn't planned. Barry said it just came out and suddenly it was who we were. Then the flood. Jive talking. Nights on Broadway. You Should Be Dancing. Clubs pulsed. Radio surrendered. In 1977, the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack moved more than 40 million copies. Staying Alive, Night Fever, How Deep Is Your Love? Not just hits, but cultural weather systems. For a time, Barry's falsetto was the most recognizable sound on earth. Fame, though, extracts its price. Barry was writing for others as well. Barbra Streisand's Woman in Love, Dionne Warwick's Heartbreaker, and Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton's Islands in the Stream. The work never let up. Money and awards rose. Energy and ease fell. You can be on top of the world and still feel alone, he admitted. Then came the whiplash. The disco sucks. Backlash swept stadiums. And the very sound that had thrilled the world became a punchline in certain corners. It felt like we went from heroes to villains overnight, Barry said. The Bee Gees released Living Eyes in 1981 to show they could do more than glitter and groove. But the public had turned away. The stages shrank. The air went thin, and still, he wrote, if the front of the record sleeve wasn't his, the melody often was. He kept stitching songs into people's lives, often quietly, always indelibly. The deepest wounds, however, came from family. First was Andy, the youngest Gibb, 12 years Barry's junior. Barry had championed him from childhood, then produced and guided the young star through I Just Want to Be Your Everything and Shadow Dancing. The ascent came fast and fame's temptations arrived faster. Addiction shadowed Andy's 20s. Barry tried to anchor him, calls, clinics, counsel, but in the end, a body can only bear so much. On March 10th, 1988, 5 days after his 30th birthday, Andy died. Doctors called it myocarditis, but everyone knew what years of struggle had done. At the funeral, the family's grief was a storm. Barbara inconsolable, Hugh shaken, Robin and Maurice white-knuckled with sorrow, Leslie weeping openly. Barry, the singer who could fill arenas, could not find a note. It doesn't matter how many people love you, he reflected later. If you don't love yourself, it can all slip away. The harmony of 4 became 3. In 1992, Hugh passed away. To the world, that's the natural order. To Barry, it was losing the first drummer of his life, the steady beat that kept a fragile family moving forward. Losing Andy was like watching a star extinguish. Losing Hugh was like losing the ground. Then the shock that knocked the breath out of him. Maurice. In 2003, Mole went to a Miami hospital with stomach pain. An intestinal blockage was discovered. Surgery followed. His heart stopped. He was 53. Maurice had been the peacemaker, the ballast, the quick joke. When the air grew heavy. If Barry was fire and Robin a storm, Maurice was the earth beneath their feet. One day he was laughing, the next day he was gone. It was so sudden I couldn't take it in, Barry said simply. The Bee Gees as an active group ended in that instant. The chemistry could not be remade. Robin's passing came as a long twilight. By the late 2000s, he was fighting cancer of the colon and liver. There were hopeful windows.